The Diablo 4 beta has just closed, and with an astounding amount of success, Blizzard is very happy. I've been playing Diablo games my entire life, and that includes Immortal, which has left me sour on Diablo, to be honest, meaning I had no desire to pre-order this game. Then, I started hearing a lot of good things about the game. I also heard a lot of creators talking shit about how everyone wants to hate on Diablo 4, and no one wants it to be good, blah, 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 blah. And I hate that. So, when I found out they were having an open beta that anyone could play, and they were dangling my favorite class in front of me, I decided to download it and give it a try. Before I get into it, I want to say I have definitely been a naysayer. I didn't see, or maybe didn't want to see, what the people who were giving praise were seeing. I was being a hater, and I will be the first to admit when I'm wrong, and I have no issues doing that now. While I was absolutely positive I wouldn't enjoy it, and completely sure I would just pass it up, I must say that the Diablo 4 beta has changed my mind. Lilith is definitely waifu material. I thought she was too much, but Mommy Lilith is definitely hot as hell, and worthy of being the Diablo 4 waifu. I was indeed blind, but now I see. Demon Mommy has my vote, and I want to give a heartfelt apology to all those people I thought were wrong, and they were in fact right. And I admit that. Huh? What? Oh, you thought that was me talking about Diablo 4? Oh, well, no. What I think about Diablo 4 is a bit more complicated than that. For this video, I'm going to specifically look at Diablo 4 as a Diablo game, as opposed to as an ARPG. I'm not going to go on and on about my reasons for doing this, but in order to explain, I'll compare an ARPG to a date, something no ARPG player has ever experienced. Most of what makes an ARPG fun happens at the end game, and the leveling experience is just kinda the lead up, like taking a date for dinner. See, all the fun happens after dinner. And how good dinner is can put your date in a better mood for what happens later, but it's not the main attraction. So a better leveling experience can make the player base happier, but whether dinner is good or it sucks, the RPG is still gonna fuck you at the end of the night. So most people remember that as opposed to what they had for dinner. That being said, dinner was actually quite nice. I really enjoyed leveling up in the beta, and I actually think Blizzard has really gone back to pull in the best parts of each game. Diablo 1 was applauded for its extremely dark and muted atmosphere, and many of the original Diablo games fans lost interest in subsequent games because they felt the atmosphere became more lighthearted with each game. Diablo 2 was less gritty, and Diablo 3 was just straight out cartoonish in its style. In fact, the original D3 dev team was so annoyed with this specific criticism, they added a rainbow unicorn level as a middle finger to their naysayers. However, Diablo 4 is dark, and it's not just dark, it's morbid. There will be some minor spoilers for the game, but I'll do my best to keep any actual details as obscure as possible, so don't worry, but you've been warned. I don't know how much people who played the beta realize this, but the Diablo team not only killed a child, but talked about its autopsy in the first 20 minutes of the game. There exists a town in the game that you see its past. In its past, all the townspeople are regular, happy people, but they end up becoming corrupted and having to be put down in present times. When you see their past, you see that there's also a child there, but you don't ever actually see this child in present. You do end up reading notes in a local hermit's cabin. You read about this small demon the hermit found, how the hermit was able to easily kill it, going on to describe how it was small, with sharp teeth, and it was obviously freshly turned. This was the child from the visions of the past. It shows attention to adding the more morbid detail that some of the previous sequels didn't. The game isn't comically dark anymore. It's just dark. There were multiple times I was playing the game and I went, what the fuck just happened? Because something fucked up or dark happened. And that's awesome. That's what Diablo is known for. Now, not everything is dark all the time, but there's little to no brevity, and I don't think the rest of the story is going to get lighter. I think it's gonna get darker. That being said, there is a problem that the Diablo series has on and off again that this game also seems to suffer from, and that's the characters. The first game had really strong characters, where the rest didn't have any original strong characters, just strong characters from the first game. And this game suffers from a similar issue. There are 2 or 3 interesting characters, but again, without spoiling anything, my favorite character story ends in the first act, and my second favorite character is Lilith. So I don't know how her arc will end. While having one of the focal points be such a compelling character is great, Lilith moments are sparse. So much of the game's moments are filled with less than stellar characters. That being said, it is only the first act that I've played, so there could be a host of well-developed characters in the following acts, but if each act is standalone, I don't know if that's much better than what we got in Diablo 2, so we'll see. Something that Diablo 2 did get right, and I personally think Diablo 4 is getting super right as well, is character builds. One of the core pillars of Diablo 2 is build diversity, but Diablo 3 and Immortal had virtually no build diversity, so that has always been a major downfall in subsequent Diablos for people whose favorite Diablo was Diablo 2. Diablo 3 moved class specking, and people who loved Diablo 2 didn't like that at all, but it's back now. I can still only have 6 skills at a time, but building how you want those skills to be used is much more exciting and fulfilling than the systems in Diablo 3 and Immortal. You can even build your character around a single item like I did with my Necromancer. It's this one. The legendary ability that it has is Blood Mist triggers corpse explosion on surrounding corpses. When Blood Mist detonates a corpse, its cooldown is reduced by 1.2 seconds, which is great. So that means that not only will it explode corpses, but when it explodes a corpse, its cooldown has gone down, and that's what my build is centered around. If you look at the skill tree, I've got capped out stuff for my minions, and then I've also got capped out Blood Mist and Corpse Explosion. I do that because those are the 2 main things for that. Since Blood Mist will proc Corpse Explosion, I want these to do the most amount of damage. I also have Blood Mist giving me corpses, and Corpse Explosion does damage to slowed enemies, which doesn't actually matter. The main part of the build besides these 2 is this one. Hewed Flesh makes it, on a lucky hit, your damage has an up to 12% chance to create a corpse at the target's location. So the idea here is that with Blood Mist, I will be hitting people, making them spawn corpses, which will then detonate, doing more damage, spawning more corpses, and there's just a lot of explosions. And Blood Mist's cooldown is going down with every hit, so that 15.2 second cooldown is going to be basically null. So, like for example, I've got a set of corpses here. Here's my Blood Mist. Watch this. Boom. And I can use it again before I'm even done. The other thing is that I'm invincible with Blood Mist active. So I'm taking absolutely no damage, but dissing out a whole ton. The only problem is that it's not great for single target, but it's really good for multi-target. That's why I've got the minions. So that's my Necromancer build, and it's just based off of the best item I found while playing, and it was a lot of fun. And while I don't know what the best builds that have been crafted are, I really liked that one. And it feels really good to have that ownership over my build. And I was only level 25. I can't even imagine how good it will feel at the end of the game, all the different possibilities that I'll have access to. That being said, I did play through the entire beta with only my Necromancer. I had all the dungeons, all the side quests, and the Lilith statues finished. So I want to talk about that loop a little bit, as I have some concerns with it. A lot of skills are locked behind dungeons, and permanent stat upgrades are locked behind altars that you have to find called Lilith statues. Personally, I never didn't like doing these, but the beta was only a small section of the game. Doing these dungeons over and over again could definitely get monotonous as hell, and without the world being randomly generated like in previous games, I think it gets even more stale. While I didn't have issues doing these dungeons in the beta, I can venture a guess that many people likely fucking despise them, and that issue is going to be made even worse by locking permanent bonuses behind doing them. It's going to make even more people sour on them than there ever needed to be. And this aspect of the game isn't really a Diablo-specific aspect at all, and is new to the series in Diablo 4. That being said, I'm going to withhold judgment on this loop until the game comes out. My hope is that the world actually drastically changes with each season. It's unlikely, but it's still my hope. I'd like to see a completely different overworld map with dungeons in different places, and the skills you get from these dungeons have changed. and maybe most unlikely of all, even changes to the story each season. I doubt that's what's going to happen. But seasons were a huge part of Diablo 3 and even Diablo 2. And if I have to farm out the same 100 dungeons and 300 Lilith statues every season, it's going to get old fast. However, that's just all speculation at this point, and I don't think talking about future seasons is super relevant specifically to the talk of the beta. What is relevant, though, is gear, and that's a tough one to talk about. So in my build, I said I have one piece of gear that my build is centered around. And there's nothing wrong with that, but gear was kind of hard to mess around with in the beta. I'm not going to break down the gear in detail. I'm trying to keep this video short, and talking about the gear in any real detail would make it far longer than I'm comfortable with. But in short, it's not easy to trade out a piece, and I don't think that's a problem with Diablo 4, but instead a problem with the Diablo 4 beta. Gear is very complicated. And you're able to upgrade it at the blacksmith now, which you weren't able to do before. And this feels like two big problems, at least with the beta. Upgrading your gear was expensive, and that caused me never to want to trade it out, which made it feel like the gear system was limiting me. But I personally think that's because of the very time-limited nature of the beta. If I was in the end game and I had millions of gold to upgrade whatever the fuck I wanted to max stats whenever I wanted to, I don't think I would have had an issue. But it was an issue in the beta. The other issue with the gear, at least in the beta, was how complex it could be. See, I had an early game pair of pants that were very low level and kind of sucked, but I never traded them out because it gave +1 to both Blood Mist and Corpse Explosion, which were kind of important to my build. So I never was able to change my pants out. Realistically, though, this is an awesome issue to have long term because it allows your gear to help complement your builds in very, very minute and interesting ways, giving you a much higher ceiling overall. But for the scope of my time with the beta, being stuck in the same pants for the entirety of it kind of sucked ass. And I think that sums up a lot of the beta. While I have both positive and negative feelings about it, it was just a beta. We don't know what's in store for the future, and anyone who thinks they know what Blizzard is going to do is stupid. Like, there was no battle pass in the beta, but a battle pass is confirmed for release. So while no microtransactions were in the beta, that doesn't mean there won't be any in the real game. That doesn't mean there will be either. It's too early to tell, and I think both sides have valid arguments if they're right, but no one knows if they're right yet. Even if someone does say they're right and they end up being right, they didn't know they were right. They were just being arrogant and acting like they would be right, and it happened to turn out that they were. That's just how it is, and it's where we are right now. Where does this leave us? Well, I think it's gonna be a great Diablo game. While I have criticisms, I want to point something out. I did everything in the beta that I could besides level another character. All that progress is now lost, and I knew it was going to be lost. But I still fucked around in the game 10 minutes before the beta shut down trying to get better gear. I have other games to play, other things to do, but a beta where all my progress was going to be wiped, where I had already done everything of value that there was to do, was demanding my attention over those things, just like every other Diablo game throughout my life. I don't know what the end game is gonna be, but I do know I'm gonna be playing it. I don't know how Lilith's story is going to unfold, but I know I'll be watching it with one hand firmly out of sight whenever she's on screen. I think Diablo 4 is carrying the Diablo torch strong, and while my opinion may change on release, I look forward to exploring that world again. Now, unfortunately, I have to wait until June for my Diablo fix. However, you may not have to. It just so happens that I replayed every single Diablo game and made a 2.5-hour retrospective on the entire Diablo series that you can watch right now. Just click here. If you don't care about the rest of the Diablo series but do care about Diablo 4, then throw me a sub, since I'll definitely be doing a retrospective about the game after I've sunk my teeth into it. Anyways, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.